Key Digital, the experts in digital audio-visual and control systems.
Let's talk about Key Digital's 4K AV over IP products and systems. AV over IP is hugely popular right now because it allows you to build expandable systems. You could add sources or displays at any time in the future after installing your system. Your systems could be non-symmetrical, so you're no longer kind of married to that cookie cutter, if you will, 4x4, 8x8, 16x16, 32x32. If you need 32 displays, but you only need 5 sources, you pick up 5 encoders and 32 decoders. That's how it works. 1 encoder per video source, 1 decoder per video display. You could build with AV over IP any type of AV distribution system, like a DA system for digital signage, where you would have one source going to 10, 20, 30 displays to all show the sign at the same time. Or you could build a matrix system with it. You could build video walls with it. It's very, very flexible. And because it's all over your network, it uses your network as the backbone. You can go building wide or campus wide. You could use fiber, 10G fiber or larger, and even features like link aggregation with your network switch to build larger than 10G fiber pipes to interconnect network switches to create one system. And you only need that one wire to each display. That wire is a Cat6. It must be a Cat6 cable with Key Digital 4K AV over IP. Now, those are the reasons why AV over IP is so popular. What is Key Digital doing that's different from the others that makes our solution so popular is we're doing all the heavy lifting for the integrators. We ask for a configuration form to be submitted at the time of your purchase order. Tell us, what are your encoders? What are your decoders? We see the examples here. You don't call them encoder 1, 2, 3. We call it DirecTV 1, DirecTV 2, DirecTV 3, wall plate. We call the displays by their name: ballroom, conference room, entry, cafeteria, etc., so that the user sees these names in their control interface, and it makes it very, very user-friendly. Also, please tell us the IP address that you want, or as you can see at the top of the first example on the left, you could just hit that checkbox that says use the subnet 192.168.0, for example, and we'll go ahead and just give you a form, tell you all of the information for your units, what each and every unit IP address was assigned. Now also, and I should say, let me take a step back. You may have noticed there's 2 IP addresses for each unit, a main IP and a video IP. One is for all the inter-device communication, that's the main IP, and the other's for the video broadcast, transmission, and reception. And it makes sure that when we're communicating from unit to unit, it doesn't interrupt the video broadcast side. And that's what makes our system very, very reliable. We also want to give you more options than anyone else for using the network switch that you like to use. You see the brands here, and here on our verified network switch list, there are step-by-step instructions. Most of them are maybe 5 pages long, and it's mostly pictures of how to configure that network switch. Now, we're more than happy to also configure your network switch for you. So just send it over to us and we'll configure it and actually test it with your network AV over IP system. And then we'll pack it all up and ship it to you. So we'll do that during the verification stage. Now, why does it say step 1, configure the network switch? You don't want to plug in your AV over IP encoders, decoders before the switch is configured. Otherwise, you can't have the features like IGMP, which is the traffic police, to direct that broadcast to go to the intended recipients only, not the other devices on your network. So that's just a real quick once over of some of the things that might get you into AV over IP and some of how AV over IP works, what's unique about Key Digital. Let's get into the products. Here's a portion of our product family, the IP922 encoders, decoders, and IP822. And the 922s were the first 4K AV over IP products we released at Key Digital. And and they were fully loaded. You'll see all the connections here in a moment. And many people told us, hey, I could sell a lot more of these systems if we could bring the price point down. And that's why we brought out the IP822s. It's the same board, but with a number of DNPs, do not produce, that help us to make the cost approximately 2/3 lower than the cost of the 922s. So let's take a look at these 922 units. What is it that makes them fully loaded? As you see here, sometimes here's a common question. What compression standard do we use? It is Motion JPEG 2000, which gives you 40 milliseconds latency. That should probably be a bullet point. We're gonna move on. That latency is a great number, by the way. You don't see any lip sync or any mouse type latency, artifacting, anything like that with a 40 millisecond latency. It's exactly 1 frame behind. So here is your HDMI input. There's also an HDMI pass-through. This is on both the 922 encoder and the 822 encoder. So if you have somebody that needs to plug in their laptop and they have a local monitor that perhaps you don't have a decoder in that room, you could go ahead and view what it is that you're sending into the AV over IP system at that local monitor. Now, only the 922 has a local input, the 922 decoder. So imagine, let's say, a Bible study room where the Bible study decoder is part of the AV over IP system, and so that they could get the content from the main congregation hall. However, when they're doing Bible study, they'd like to use this local input to switch over to that local source for a presentation of just that's just intended for that small room. And that's only on the 922 decoder, not on the 822. Also, the 922s have audio de-embedding, and it's very unique. It's not only on the decoder side, we also have it on the encoder side. And to me, that makes the most sense. A lot of our competition only has audio de-embed on the decoders. Then you got to run the audio back to the equipment rack. Whereas with our 922s, encoder audio de-embedding, you could feed right in that equipment rack to your audio DSPs, audio system. And these de-embed ports are actually preamps. You could do volume control, muting control. You could adjust the delay so that if you go into your audio system and you happen to have any kind of lip sync, which, as we said before, there is a 40 millisecond delay, which is also good, as I said before, but you could even fine tune even more precisely if needed with our system. And there is 3-band EQ. On the decoder side, imagine being in your room and you just have a small amplifier located there. Perfect example as we see here. There's also USB connectivity. Each encoder has a single USB host port on USB-B, and each decoder has 2 USB-A ports for USB devices. Now, this is not supporting of a webcam, but think of it for keyboard and mouse, okay? So here we look at a typical application and operation center. There are 6 operator PCs on the left side of the diagram. There are 3 operator stations. In the 922 system, video, audio, and USB switch together. So if operator 1 selects, let's just say PC3, for example, it will receive the audio, the video, and now the keyboard and mouse are controlling that PC3. Now, speaking of operation centers, video walls, very popular in operation centers, emergency response rooms, also digital signage, and it really just delivers a wow factor to your system. Here we see a showcase of our capability to have main and sub video walls. The main is the overall video wall, and then you could also break the inner displays into their own video wall, as long as it's always within the bezel of the displays. There's no picture-in-picture with our system, but you could have up to 16 wide and 16 high for your video wall. That's a lot of displays. And we could also rotate the image. And as I mentioned, the sub and video walls are all controlled very easily from our Key Digital app, as we'll show you here in a few moments. On the 922s, you have dual LAN ports. And it's like a 2-port switch. So imagine you only have a single Cat6 run to your projector, and you need to get it on your network. voila, you just connect LAN 2 into that projector. Now it is connected. Here we see where the value really begins to showcase itself with our AV over IP system. These I/O ports, there's 3 of them on the 922s, there's 2 of them on the 822s. Any control system can send our open API strings to tell any port to send a command. So for example, you could send an IP string to our decoder to say, hey, port 1, send an IR burst to turn on a Samsung display. Or, hey, port 2, send an RS-232 command to control our amplifier volume up or down. And we have this open API. We have a very cool tool in Key Digital's IR RS-232 managers. We have an open API button so that you can actually open our IR manager. You can say, hey, what does it look like if I need to send the open API string from my RTI control system? You could go to Samsung, click on the power on command, and then press the open API button, copy and paste that string into your RTI or any control system, send it to us over IP, and now you're powering on and off your display, effectively adding more control ports to your control system at $0 additional. Now, something that's very unique about Key Digital, continuing on the discussion of these control ports, is that you could choose any encoder or any decoder to be the control interface for your control system. So typically that's done over IP. So you would just use the main IP address of any one encoder or decoder, and you could send the string from your control system, and we use the exact same string as we've used in all of our matrix switchers for the past dozen years. It's that easy. So you could send it over IP. You could also send it over these the I/O ports over RS-232. Every unit in our system knows about every other unit. It's part of our switcher configuration. So you build a virtual switch file, load it into the units, and that's how you could choose any one unit to be the control interface, because it will receive a command like, hey, output 12, select input 20, which is what that command stands for there, SPO, XX, SI, YY. And it will say, hey, I'm not output 12 or input 20. I'm going to forward it to that to those devices, though, that need to take that action. And it's just that easy. But where the value really begins to show itself and what makes our system so very powerful is here. When you use these multifunction ports as control ports for our Compass Control Pro system. It's built in, you don't need to add any additional hardware, and it's going to make your proposals to your end users, your customers, the most competitive proposals they will receive. We guarantee it. So here you have 8 SAT boxes, a cable and digital signage. That's 10 encoders. You have 15 displays between the 15 decoders between the 14 displays and 1 projector. That's a grand total of 25 encoders and decoders. 922s have 3 ports. That would be 75 control ports to do things like turn on and off the displays, control the volume through the audio system, control the channels on the cable and SAT boxes, send voltage triggering to the projector screen, control the access control system via RS-232, the lighting control via IP, the music streaming service over IP as well. Typically with our Compass Control Pro system, it is all built in. You just need to have the licensing for the iPad. Now, what doesn't require licensing is the free Key Digital app. And we have an amazing feature called Display Control, aptly named because even with our free app, you can control your displays on, off, volume plus, volume minus, and mute. We have support for 6 brands, and you can even control your commercial projectors using PJ Link protocol from our Key Digital management software, which is a little like the Key Digital app, but on a PC. So just connect the HDMI from the decoder to your display and an IR emitter from the decoder to the display. In the Key Digital management software, you will choose LG, Samsung, Sony, Vizio, Epson, Panasonic or Sharp for the IR codes, or PJ Link IP for controlling over the KDMS. So you have your top brands there. And now, with that feature enabled, there in your Key Digital app, the free app, we see in the bottom left corner the display control panel. You choose your decoder and you press power on, power off, volume plus, minus, or mute. And it's perfect for sports bars on a budget, perfect for campus AV distribution. Not only can you turn on and off the display, but you even see there that local button that's there in the blue section. It's a green button. That would be for your decoder to select that local source. And when you do so, you see the L little square icon that's there over decoder 1, indicating that would be selecting a local source. So this is all within our free app. No programming necessary, and typically you would actually see the name of your encoder's decoders, but this is just an image that came from our engineers. Other great features include 4K to 1080p down convert, so that you can mix and match brand new 4K monitors and maybe not so new 1080p displays and projectors. And here is more of that free app where you can just simply drag your finger to control the video wall. You saw the example earlier of pressing a decoder and then an encoder for switching. So it works like that: decoder first, encoder second. We even have a thumbnail preview of your sources so that you could see exactly what's going into each encoder, so that you could, see, oh, this is going to be the insert sports team name here game, because you see their jerseys on the display without having to go to the rack and find out what encoder is what. Now, in addition to the 922 822s, we have the VW 4x4 Pro 4K. This is a video wall kit that basically, if you just want to do a video wall, which is extremely popular in sports bars right now, you could plug your 4 encoders in. It includes the network switch. Of course, everything is pre-configured. It includes that shelf. We include one 922 encoder so that you could take whatever is your primary encoder and plug it in there, so you could get the audio out into your audio system. And it also has that second LAN port, so you could plug in a Wi-Fi router and integrate this into your system for app control. And with all of our video wall capabilities, we have the ability to flip, what we call a panel flip. The top row displays, install them upside down. Now you've got consumer panels in your video wall, bringing the cost of your video wall to somewhere around $500 per display. It's really a fantastic way to conjoin all of those narrow sides so that your video wall looks very fluid. And you could also make that even tighter with bezel adjustment, so that the image just seems to flow right through the bezel there. We have a really cool feature for bezel adjustment in our system, where you essentially just enter the dimensions of width and height of your screen, width of height of the screen with bezel and without bezel, and we automatically apply those adjustments. So now the 822s, 922s, they could mix and match in a system, right? We rewind the tape and we remember that. But we also have IP 1022s. These work within their own system only. You'll see the form factor looks identical to the 922s, but it is a totally different hardware, software inside. But it's very deep level software. So it's not something that we could just upgrade the 922s for. It takes time, which takes money. So they're a little bit more expensive than the 922s. What else is unique with the 1022s? You have fully independent audio, video, and USB routing. So that once again, we return to the operation center, and the operator 1 is viewing PC2, is listening to PC5, and it has keyboard mouse control of PC3. So we didn't get that with the 922s. Remember, video, audio, and keyboard mouse followed each other. It is fully independent in the 1022s. And we also have support for Mosaic Video Wall. gets us into the very cool stuff where you are more or less decorating. Your video walls are not defined by their dimensions of how many displays wide and high, but instead you essentially have a canvas, and you could place displays of various sizes and orientations within that canvas, excuse me. Now, here's another example, and this is a perfect example to tell you that with Key Digital Mosaic video walls, you still have to install your monitors either horizontally or vertically, not diagonally. So this was the quick pitch of as quick as could be for our 4K AV over IP system. You are not the only one using this product. Let's show you some examples of how it is being used. Here we have our command center, a typical command center, 2 video walls. You have a projector. This was one of the earliest AV over IP installs for Key Digital. In fact, you have loads of keyboard and mouse plugins so that you could do things like monitor the mouse they're using to monitor security cameras, adjusting the PTZ for those cameras, keyboard and mouse to go into the computers to monitor the data of arrival and departure information for this specific command center. We're also using our 4K AV over IP for digital signage in a bank where each floor has its own video wall, and the credit card companies get to pay for the system because the credit card companies are buying the ad space on the video wall. Bar and restaurants, look how clean this is. AV over IP takes all the clutter that used to be in the rack, and it makes things so very streamlined. This is just a really fantastic project that includes a 4x4 video wall that has various presets built. This is controlled by our Compass Control Pro system with our GUI there that you could see of our modular 2.0 layout. NASDAQ Middle East and more. We just want to thank you for watching this video on Key Digital's 4K AV over IP solutions. Happy